Hello everybody. I apologize for the darkness of this video, but we have a bird in the classroom and I'm trying to lure him to the light, and so far he hasn't gone for it. Alright, but anyhow, moving on. 35.2 Defenses against infection. Our goal is to explain the basic function of the human immune system, including specific, non-specific immune response, vaccines, and antibodies. Far side says 65 million years ago when cows ruled the earth. Alright, so our objectives are to describe the body's non-specific defenses against invading pathogens, also describe the function of the immune system's specific defenses, and list the body's specific defenses against pathogens. So when we think about it, when pathogens are all around us, right, there's viruses, there's bacteria, fungus, it's everywhere. It might seem amazing that most of us aren't sick most of the time. So why are we usually free from infections, and why do we usually recover from pathogens that do infect us? One reason is that our bodies have an incredibly powerful and adaptable series of defenses that protect us against a wide range of pathogens. So objective 1 is to describe the body's non-specific defenses against invading pathogens. Non-specific, let's talk about that. So the body's first defense against pathogens is a combination of physical and chemical barriers. These barriers include the skin, tears, and other secretions, the inflammatory response, interferons, and fever. These barriers are called non-specific defenses because they act against a wide range of pathogens. The most widespread non-specific defense is your skin. Very few pathogens can penetrate the layers of dead cells that form the skin surfaces. Other non-specific defenses protect parts of the body that are not covered by skin, such as the mouth, nose, and eyes. Saliva, mucus, and tears contain lysozyme, an enzyme that breaks down bacterial cell walls. Mucus in your nose and throat traps the pathogens, and when cilia push the mucus trap pathogens away from your lungs, too. Stomach secretions destroy many pathogens that are then swallowed. If pathogens do make it into the body, though, like through a cut in the skin, for example, the body's second line of defense swings into action. These mechanisms include the inflammatory response, the actions of the interferons, and fever. The inflammatory response causes affected areas to become red and painful or inflamed. The response begins with pathogens stimulate cells called mast cells to release chemicals known as histamines. Histamines increase the flow of blood and fluids to the affected area. Fluid leaking from the expanded blood vessels cause the area then to swell. White blood cells move from blood vessels into the infected areas. White blood cells moving in right there. Many of these white blood cells are called phagocytes, which engulf and destroy the bacteria. All this activity around a wound may cause a local rise in temperature. That's why a wounded area sometimes then feels warm. When a virus infects body cells, certain host cells produce proteins that inhibit synthesis of viral proteins and help block viral replication. Scientists name these proteins interferons because they interfere with the viral growth. Interferons slow down the progress of infection and buy time for specific immune defenses to respond. The immune system also releases chemicals that increase body temperature, producing a fever. The increased body temperature may slow down or stop the growth of some pathogens. Higher body temperatures also speed up several parts of the immune response. So objective 1 was to describe the body's non-specific defenses against invading pathogens. Non-specific defenses include the skin, tears, and other secretions, the inflammatory response, interferons, and fever. Objective 2, describe the function of the immune system's specific defenses now. A healthy immune system recognizes all cells and proteins that actually belong in the body and treats these cells and proteins as self. This ability to recognize self is essential because the immune system controls powerful cellular and chemical weapons that can cause problems if turned against the body's own cells. Specific immune defenses are triggered by molecules called antigens. An antigen is any foreign substance that can stimulate an immune response. Typically, antigens are located on the outer surface of bacteria, viruses, or parasites. The immune system responds to antigens by increasing the number of cells that either attack the invaders directly or that produce proteins called antibodies. The main role of antibodies is to tag antigens for destruction by immune cells. Antibodies may be attached to particular immune cells, or they may be free-floating in plasma. The body makes up to 10 billion different types of antibodies. The shape of each type of antibody allows it to attach to one specific antigen. The main working cells in immune response are B lymphocytes, are called B cells, and T lymphocytes, T cells. B cells are produced and mature in the red bone marrow. B cells have embedded antibodies that discover antigens in the body fluids. There's a B cell, sorry about that. T cells are produced in the bone marrow, but mature in the thymus, as we learned before, which is an endocrine gland. T cells must be presented with an antigen by infected body cells or immune cells that have encountered antigens. Each B cell and T cell is capable of recognizing one specific antigen. A person's genes determine the particular B and T cells that are produced. When mature, both types of cells travel to lymph nodes and the spleen, where they will encounter antigens. So objective 2 is describe the function of the immune system's specific defenses. The immune system's specific defenses distinguishes between self and other, and they inactivate or kill any foreign substances or cell that enters the body. So objective 3 is list the body's specific defenses against pathogens. So the immune response that defends against antigens in body fluids, such as blood and lymph, is called humoral immunity. B cells play the major role in humoral immunity. When a pathogen invades the body, its antigens are recognized by the antibodies on the surface of a few existing B cells. All right? I'm sorry, I don't want to go that far yet. Antibodies are the main weapons of the humoral immune response. An antibody is shaped like the letter Y, as you can see right here, antibodies, and has two identical antigen binding sites. The shapes of the binding sites enables an antibody to recognize a specific antigen with a complementary shape. When an antigen binds to an antibody by a B cell, T cells stimulate the B cell to grow and divide rapidly. The growth and division produces many B cells of two types, like plasma cells and memory B cells, which will come important next. So plasma cells produce and release antibodies that are carried through the bloodstream. These antibodies recognize and bind to free-floating antigens or to antigens on the surfaces of pathogens. So when antibodies bind to the antigens, they signal other parts of the immune system to attack and destroy the invader. So when they bind to them, it's like, we're over here kind of a thing. Some types of antibodies can disable the invaders until they are destroyed. A healthy adult can produce about 10 billion different types of antibodies, each of which can bind to a different type of antigen. This antibody diversity actually enables the immune system to respond to virtually any kind of other that enters the body. Plasma cells die after an infection is gone, but some B cells that recognize a particular antigen remain alive. These cells, called memory B cells, react quickly if the same pathogen enters the body again. Memory B cells rapidly reproduce new plasma cells to battle a returning pathogen. The secondary response occurs much faster than the first response to a pathogen. Immune memory helps provide long-term immunity to certain diseases, and that's the reason why vaccines work too. Another part of the immune response, which depends on the action of macrophages and several types of T cells, is called the cell-mediated immunity. This part of the immune system defends the body against viruses, fungi, and single-celled pathogens. T cells also protect the body from its own cells when they become cancerous. When a cell, this is how it works. Number one, when a cell is infected by a pathogen or when a phagocyte consumes a pathogen, the cell displays a portion of the antigen on the other surface of its membrane. This membrane attachment is a signal to the circulating T cells called helper T cells. The activated helper T cells divide into more helper T cells, which go to activate the B cells, activate cytotoxic T cells, and then also produce memory T cells. The cytotoxic T cells hunt down the body cells infected with particular antigen and kill the cells. They kill infected cells by puncturing the membranes or initiating apoptosis, as you remember is programmed cell death. The memory T cells over here enable the immune system to respond quickly if that same pathogen enters the body again. Pretty cool, isn't it? Another type of T cell called suppressor T cells inhibits the immune response once an infection is under control. They may also be involved in preventing autoimmune diseases. Although cytotoxic T cells are helpful in the immune system, they make the acceptance of organ transplants difficult. When an organ is transplanted from one person to another, the normal response of the recipient's immune system would be to recognize it as non-self. T cells and proteins would damage and destroy the transplanted organ in a process known as rejection. To prevent this organ rejection, doctors search for a donor whose cell markers are nearly identical to the cell markers of the recipient. Organ recipients must take drugs, usually for the rest of their lives, to suppress the cell-mediated immune response. So objective 3 was the list of body's specific defenses against pathogens. The specific immune response has two main styles of actions. One is humoral immunity and cell-mediated immunity, and you need to know the differences between them and how they both function. So objectives are describe the body's non-specific defenses against evading pathogens, describe the function of the immune system's specific defenses, and list the body's specific defenses against pathogens. And yes, they all support the goal to explain the basic function of the human immune system, including specific and non-specific immune responses, vaccines, and antibodies. And there is a very cute picture for you. Enjoy.